And thank you everyone at home for tuning in and even watching the recording. I'm Sam Smeltzer, and this is Melissa Ural, and we're from the Heart Center, spelled HR Art Center, and we basically run a corporate wellness center that helps to heal burnout, and we do that predominantly using a modality known as medical Qigong, which is what we're here to talk to you about today. I'm really excited to be here for a multitude of reasons. And I always like to start in a place of gratitude. And even though Kara's all the way at the front door and Matt's tucked in behind the tech there, but these two were pretty instrumental for me to even get to the place where I am today, because it is through Firefly and New Visions that I became exposed to holistic practices and became okay with the fact that I was energy sensitive, and then began to flourish, which is what led me to Qigong. And in fact, it was a tarot reading with Pat, who I think is online, in New Visions at an open house, that told me that I should go find Qigong. So it's just a very serendipitous and very divine timing that we be here today. And so I'm just grateful for this entire process, this entire moment. And thank you to all of you for sharing it with me. So tonight we want to do a couple of things. I want to share with you kind of the main significance and objectives behind medical Qigong. Okay. And then we want to also share about the impact that Qigong can have. And Melissa's going to do that by sharing her story with you today. And then we're also going to do a movement practice as well, so that hopefully we can all experience how this beautiful practice can shift our energy and release it and do some really beautiful things. So the first thing that I just want to kind of get out of the way, when you think about Qigong, the one that we are, the format that we're most familiar with is usually the movement piece, that I usually say is like Tai Chi slowed down. And that is the way that Qigong was predominantly used, because it's a form of energy care. It's a way of doing the workout to take care of your energy. And so heavily they were used in China, and you would see them in the parks, and that's what they would be doing. We are trained in a specific branch of Qigong that focuses on the medical side, which isn't mean we're doing Western medicine kind of work. We're taking the Eastern medicine philosophies and being able to intervene when something goes wrong with the energy, or when the energy essentially gets stuck. And so that's where the difference is with what we kind of study. Our center focuses on healing burnout. And so basically what we see is with burnout or even high stress, those are all forms of energy getting stuck. And that's where this modality has been really effective on making it move. And Melissa will illustrate this beautifully when she tells her story. So one of the things that really caught my attention about medical Qigong, as to why I'm just, I guess, kind of obsessed with it, because I'm like nerding out on it, is that its ultimate goal is to establish a conscious inner harmony within an individual. So that means the whole goal of medical Qigong is for you to know what it's like to be at a state of peace and presence in your own body, for you to know your body physically, emotionally, mentally, spiritually at a level that you can maintain peace. And it's meant for you to be able to do that and like self-preserve it. And that's just a beautiful thing that I think all of us are after. We're all after being able to find that nice, beautiful pause between movement and stillness that allows us to really fully live our life to the fullest. And so how does medical Qigong do this? We do it through basically 3 actions that we do through movement. So whether we are doing it through movement, which we'll try a little bit later on this evening, or we do it through table interventions, which I always make jokes is like the lazy man version of Qigong. So you can actually lay on a table, on a massage table, similar to like if you were receiving Reiki, but have the energy moved and addressed on the table through an intervention with a practitioner like myself or Melissa. And so the stages that we go through when we're working on somebody, or if you're doing the movement exercises, are threefold. The first is what we call purging. And this is the process of actually moving out the energy that no longer serves us. And so for many of us, we are sensitive to energy. If you're an empath, you absorb energy, you come in contact with a lot of it. But this was one of the first modalities that I heard where we were taught how to really go through and really clear ourselves. Like sometimes we do Epsom salt baths, we do a lot of clearing of spaces, but this is about really truly giving yourself an energetic bath intentionally and releasing things so that you're not carrying things with you all the time. So it's all about making that space. The second thing is called tonifying. And this is about bringing new energy in so that you're not just cycling the one energy source around and around. It's about intentionally inviting new nourishing energy into the body. And you can actually channel and target specific things in the body to use that energy for. So if it's an emotional kind of release that you need to materialize, if there's if it's for spiritual kind of development, so you're trying to figure out what your purpose is, you can actually program the energy through your own exercises or with a practitioner to do that. And then the last one is called regulation, which is basically just the process of moving the energy through the system to make sure that it is flowing freely and it's flowing evenly, and that there's no pockets of excess or deficiency throughout the body. So we always say that, like, when we're doing an energetic practice for Qigong, if there's like pinches or like something's a little uncomfortable, that's actually a pocket of stagnated energy. And so we do a regulatory practice that allows us to kind of move it through and have that happen. So those are the three things that we do with medical Qigong. And, I could obviously sit here and lecture on those kinds of things, but what I think is really cool is when you can learn about what the impact is on someone's life. And so that's why I really wanted to bring Melissa with me today, because Melissa we make jokes, we call her guinea pig zero on our team, because she came to us, and I highly encouraged that medical Qigong might be beneficial to her in her situation. And she literally dove in, like, without hesitation. And as somebody who did not have a lot of exposure to anything holistic, it was quite incredible. But it's because of her devotion to the practice that she had really great, powerful outcomes. And so I'm going to pause talking, and I'm going to pass the stage over to Melissa and let her share about that story so that she can come to life all those things that I was just talking about.
Thank you. I was waiting for her to dance off the side, so sorry. Okay, there we go. It's our little act that we do. So thank you guys for being here and online as well. I really do appreciate it. And Sam, thank you for allowing me to come and tell my story. So as Sam said, guinea pig number 0, and wasn't quite sure what that was going to entail. And so I have been in an HR role my whole entire career. I knew it before I even wanted to graduate from college, that's what I wanted to do. And so I've been in HR my entire career because I've always wanted to help people. I always wanted to be helpful. And I think as I went through my career, I think there was always situations where I never felt like I knew who I was. Like I was always trying. There was always this imposter syndrome. There was always this never enough. And like, I didn't know what it was. There were a lot of times where I could go and just kill my work and it was great. And then there were times that I couldn't even link. I was drowning. And what ended up happening was I went through a few different positions and I found the same thing kept happening over and over and over. And then it led me to April 22nd, 2022. I was a VP of HR for a local company, and I was called into the office with my boss and another boss, and they said, "We're letting you go." And there was an attorney there. And so I'm sitting here and my world was just rocked in that moment. And I really wasn't sure what to do. I left, I was crying. I'm like, I don't know what's going to happen. And it was funny because the one boss said, "We love you as a person, but," and I always tried to get people's validation. Like I always wanted people to validate that I was good enough in what I was doing or that I could achieve things. So that was kind of another dagger to the heart in that moment when that happens. So I was kind of sitting back, started to think about HR positions again. Where do I want to go? What do I want to do? And I kept seeing these posts from Sam, from LinkedIn, Facebook. We've known each other for a while in the HR world, as well as when I was in consulting before her other company was right down the road. And I've actually utilized her services way back when. And so I saw her post and they were talking about burnout. They were talking about the energy and not having enough energy, the imposter syndrome, not feeling worthy. And I'm like, she's writing these for me. It was like everything spoke to me. So when I was getting ready to look for an HR position, I reached out to Sam and she goes, well, do you want to have lunch? I said, sure. So we go to have lunch and we're talking and we're catching up. And then Sam says to me, have you ever thought about coming and working with me? I said, what do you do? Because it has changed since I last knew. And so we started talking about medical Qigong and about the work that she wanted to do with burnout. And I love helping people. And I want to create cultures and businesses that are healthy and not toxic in what we've had. So I said, okay, let's go. Wasn't quite sure what I was signing up for. Let's just be honest. And if I look back now, and my year ago person before I started here would have been like, you're doing what? But what I said is I came in as a healthy skeptic. I wasn't quite sure what was going to happen, but I figured if I could have those same results that she was talking about, why not give it a try? So Sam gave me a couple books and she was very open to say, question what you want to question. Like you need to have your questions answered. And so started to research, started to learn. And the more I found, the more it made sense. The more it all connected, how we are so connected, our emotions from our physical body to our spiritual body to everyone connected. It made sense. And so then came the day that Sam gave me my first table intervention. And so I didn't know what was going to happen. So Sam was talking to me and she said, you can have any type of reaction or release from this. You can laugh, you can cry, you can have to go to the bathroom. And I'm going, okay, let's just sit down and see what happens. So Sam went through, did her stuff. I could feel things moving. My eyes were closed. I had an eye pillow on. And I just remember seeing colors and then seeing like, it was almost like a flower going like this. And then at the end, we started talking about it. And Sam's like, well, I was doing that to your spleen. It's like, nope. So it was really interesting that I could feel that and sense that in those moments. She did end up telling me that I had stagnation in my liver, large intestine, lungs, spleen. And I was like, am I going to be okay? I was kind of scared after that moment, not going to lie. And she was like, no, we got some stuff moving. And so I thought I was going to work for the rest of the day. And then after about 20 minutes, I'm like, you know what? I think I'm just going to go home. Glad I did is because as soon as I got home, I started to bawl. And it was happened over and over again, like on and off through that entire weekend. I didn't know why I was crying. I was just crying. And so when Sam texted me the next day, are you okay? I'm like, what's going on? So we had these conversations, and really what she did was she unlocked past things that were stuck that I didn't know that I was holding on to. And some people who go through this journey and that we've seen, they do know what they're holding on to. They do have to kind of process through that. I didn't at that moment. I can say, like, looking back, I'm 100% a different person. And it even happened just with that one table session and as well as doing my own cultivation, because we have to make sure that we keep cultivating so that we can help other people. Because what I found was being in HR, always wanting to help people, always giving, I never gave to myself. And what happened was I depleted myself, so then I couldn't help people. And I didn't know that in the moment until I got out and got clarity. So I think one of the great moments for me was everyone kept saying, you look different. You look like a different person. You feel like your aura has changed. And I'm like, it has. The day came when I saw one of my bosses and he commented on how a different person I was. He was like, you just look happy. And like, he congratulated me for that moment.
One of the old bosses.
That fired me. That was in that same room and said that. And I was like, but it meant a lot to me but I wasn't searching that anymore because I didn't need that validation, because I figured out, okay, I might not have figured out, but like I was getting my my energy balance. So I knew that I didn't need that. I needed to have myself. I needed to love myself. I needed to understand myself and look at myself for that validation. And I could feel it too. I knew I was different. Things that used to bother me don't bother me anymore. I found that I used to numb. And so numbing for me was shopping and eating late at night. And so I would just shop because I wasn't happy. I was shopping because I didn't know what to do. And I was just shopping because it was something that I could do, and it didn't make me have to kind of deal with whatever was going on. I don't like to shop anymore, which is kind of sad in its own respect, because I used to love it. And so now it doesn't even bother me to go shopping. And it's one of my triggers. And I know when I'm eating late at night that my energy's off, that something's going on. So my journey has been on and off. And I think one of the things that I was scared about when I first started this was, how am I supposed to heal people when I'm still broken? How am I supposed to give when I'm still healing? I think it was realizing that we never end healing. We're constantly healing. We are going to be healing till the day we leave this earth. And I was like, okay, so I can understand that. I'm okay with that. And then, for me, it was when I started to tell my story to other people that they were like, I see that, I'm going through that, and I want those same things. And so it was kind of sharing my story to help other people heal as well. And so I've gone through, and I still have my releases. I still have my up and down moments. And I know a lot of times we have to go through this to get to the other side. And there's people that aren't willing to go through that journey. But we're trying to get people to buy into, to understand how great it feels when you're on this side. Mm-hmm. And again, I'm not healed 100%, but I'm a heck of a lot better than where I was a year and a half ago. And I'm so thankful that, the universe brought me Sam in the way that she did. And it was interesting because I sent some of my workers to Sam when they had issues and they needed some coaching, and she helped them as well. So I think it was this thing that we were always connected and we were always just there. And I'm never so grateful that I've been able to work with Sam and Steph at the Heart Center so that we can kind of help and give back to the people who are going through some of this stuff too. So the one thing I know is it's not a once and done. Like, this journey is a journey, and even little steps in this journey make tremendous impacts in people's lives. It made it in mine. And I'm so excited that I was able to share this story with you, both here and at home. And I really appreciate the opportunity, because now I look back and I see, to see where I was, to see my coach or one of my trainers come in and say, Melissa, if you were going down that path, I'm afraid where you'd be right now. You weren't healthy. And what I mean by healthy is I'd come home and I was stressed. I was like, I couldn't think. I wasn't giving my family my best. I wasn't giving my work my best. I wasn't giving myself my best. And I was always hard on myself. I was always giving myself negative feedback. I never gave myself positive feedback. I never looked like I was good enough. And so I always thought something was wrong with me. So in essence, there probably was. It was my spleen wasn't, it was blocked and there was stagnation there. So to clean that stuff out and to know that those emotions were living in me and that's causing some of that stuff was freeing. I still have a lot to learn. And I'm so excited every day that I get to wake up and do this journey. And I just hope that other people can actually get to witness and be a part and just feel the difference you can have when you have just bringing that balance and peace to yourself. Mm-hmm. So I want to thank you guys for allowing me to talk. And then we're going to do some exercises.
Yeah. Thank you, Melissa.
Yes.
And some of the things that Melissa just touched on that I kind of want to just reiterate from kind of the theory and what's happening in the background perspective. So you heard her referencing organs. So medical Qigong, we're a branch of Chinese medicine. We work with the meridians, the same thing that you do in acupuncture, but we don't use needles. But one of the things that I think is really apparent when you listen to that story is it talks about the layers that we accumulate when energy just builds on top of each other. And from a classic Oriental theory perspective, what we see is that energy starts at a spiritual level and it becomes stagnated. So why you came into this world, why you pursued whatever lessons you were going to pursue in this lifetime, if that's what your belief system is, the second that you kind of hit that roadblock and you decide that the detour or the distraction or some other coping strategy that can calm it down is more enticing than actually doing the work, we start to stagnate energy. And when that energy becomes stagnant, it turns into a mental or emotional stagnation. And so this was really eye-opening for me because, you know, somebody like what Melissa said at the beginning, in the business world, there's all kinds of books out there about find your why, find your purpose. And we know everyone's hunting for this. And like, it's so challenging to get back there, but you've got all these layers of almost cluttered, kind of stagnated energy on top of that. So instead, this was really eye-opening to me from an emotional or a mental thought process. So like obsessive thoughts and you're worrying, that's signs that there's stagnated energy in the spleen. That from a spiritual level, the spleen is the great translator of the desires of the heart that then delivers to the kidneys and the willpower to actually make your dreams happen. And so this sign, you know, the body's this incredible thing. It's communicating all these messages, trying to say, help me. And then we find like a coping strategy, like for the spleen, sugar. Like, oh, and August right now, it's late summer, it's the season. So if you've been reaching for baked goods and you're like, I never eat baked goods, I don't know what's happening to me. It's spleen season. Okay. So, you know, and usually we start not trusting people. There's all kinds of like themes there. And this is what I love about this modality is they started to, you know, the Chinese medicine aspect, they were like these psychologists that watched people and created these maps of how the energy flowed through the body, but then also what were the patterns of these people and what were they experiencing? So if it's a mental or an emotion, and then the thought is, if we choose not to address it when it starts bubbling it up as a thought process or an emotion, it's now going to settle in the body at a physical level. And that's where the connection comes, where we're the balance to Western medicine. So back in the day in China, medical Qigong doctors were right next to Western medicine doctors. And they were there because Western medicine would intervene when, you know, something happened, when the energy settled in the point that there has to be surgery, but it was meant to be the last resort. And so we do look at, like, if I have appendicitis or I have a liver, is that really associated with something that happened with an external environment, or is the root cause go all the way back to a spiritual stagnation that's now built over time? And can we pull those layers back? And so then when I'm talking about those three objectives at the beginning of purging, like these beautiful practices that you can choose to pull those layers away. Yes, you can have someone like us do it for you if you're too tired and it's too overwhelming, but this was all meant for someone to be able to do and heal themselves. And honestly, the one reason why there's so many beautiful modalities out there and there's so many talented energy practitioners, the reason why I love medical Qigong, it's the first thing that basically had to keep me in check for me to do this work. So like if I don't do my own cultivation and good ethics, I can't work on my clients. And there have been times where I've fallen off the bandwagon, I've done things, and Melissa and Steph, who's sitting in the audience, will call me out and say, hey, we're rescheduling your clients because it's not in good ethics, it's not healthy for you, it's not healthy for them, and then kind of retransitioning it. So we have to cultivate and we have to clear and we have to take care of ourselves. So you have that clearing, you have that tonifying, and you have that regulating that allows you to kind of move these stagnations through and start having them flow. So I see that we have maybe a question.
Is it possible for you to just briefly share a little bit about the seasons and how the kind of the flow of the clock and things like that, just for the people who are very new, just so you can see how that ties in, because you talked about spleen season and sugar cravings.
Yeah.
Could you briefly connect that for us?
Yeah, so we'll go very high level. So from in Chinese medicine, we focus predominantly on 5 yin organs that have a yang pairing. but we focus on the yin organs because if we focus on them, we kind of also, it automatically addresses the yang organ as well. So it's like a 2-for-1 deal. So it's like a sale. These organs are paired to the seasons, and they're also paired to the elements that we study in Chinese medicine. So late summer is spleen season. You already heard me talk about it's the great translator for the seasons. If you look at the really ancient maps, the original maps from a 5-element and a cycle perspective, late summer didn't exist. Late summer and spleen actually represented the transition between each season. We call the spleen the self-care organ. So it makes sense that you would have to take care of yourself in between the seasons. So even though technically we're in this season, I just want to like say on a greater perspective, as I talk through the others, technically spleen should be inserted in between each of them. Okay. So
if I'm trying to practically understand, so if you are at the end of like all this outside work, planting and potentially getting ready to harvest, and if you're kind of running on empty and your spleen chi would get low because of maybe what we were doing during those seasons, and that being associated with the chi deficiencies or changes?
Not necessarily, but yes, you could drain the energy during that time frame. Technically with spleen, the element that's associated with spleen is earth. So you playing in the dirt would actually help kind of cultivate that. So it would be a happy balance. But if you were already having deficiency in the spleen, so your baseline energy was low, so say that you were struggling with trusting people, you were always obsessively worrying, and if that was already low during late summer, you could see a tank. Like it's basically, that's the time for the body to really start to like shine and kind of say, hello, pay attention to me. Like, please help me, do something to help me. And so what we've seen, like this morning, I worked with a client and we've never talked about spleen. Today, he came in for an August appointment. The spleen was like, he's got all kinds of spleen issues. And I've been waiting all year to kind of just highlight and say that he's worried and he's not doing what he's meant to be doing in this lifetime. And as soon as I said that to him out loud, he knew that that was true. So that is what's also true about this. So basically your deficiency or excess, like any kind of imbalance, is going to get even more obvious during its season. So since you went into harvest, so we all know that fall is coming up next. Fall is known as the great time for evaluation. It's tied to the lungs and it's tied to the metal element. All right, so take a deep breath in. Those lungs are responsible for allowing us to process grief and sadness healthy. It's allowed us to have integrity with ourselves and have good ethics and live in those kinds of those spectrums. And so then we have that. And then we go into winter, which is always the fascinating one for me because I always write about this, because winter, we know that nature does what in winter, at least here, if California doesn't. Go ahead, you were saying. It sleeps, right? Winter is the great time for hibernation. It's the great time for deep reflection. It's the water element. It's tied to the kidneys, which from Chinese medicine perspective, that's where our primal energy source is. So that is the time for the great recharge. Yet what do we do in winter? We have holidays. That's right. We have parties. And then we go into January where we all have fitness goals and we go to the gym, and then you're pushing it at the brink and you're so tired. And if you ever feel like you start a health goal and you're at the gym and it's like the world's working against you, it is, because nature's like, go to sleep, please come back in the spring. Okay. So you have that. It's just that relationship there. From winter, we go into spring. This is when we see that sprouting of action. This is tied to your liver. So the liver is your planning organ. It is creativity. It's where ideas should be happening. So if you're doing anything like that, that's when you want to do it, is in spring season. That's when you start to, so you have like the deep reflection, and then you get to go into the spring and start to process those kinds of things. The emotion that shows up when there's an imbalance in the liver is anger and frustration. So in spring, if you're really mad at everybody when you're driving and you're like, why do I have road rage only in the spring? It's the liver saying, hello, help me a little bit. And then we come to summer, which is supposed to be the most active time of the year. It's the most yang, and it's associated with the heart and it's associated with fire. Oh, and the element for the spring, for spring, I forgot, is wood. So that kind of brings that kind of full circle around. That's very high level. So there's lots of different layers, just like with lots of modalities that to this. And so that gives you a taste. And obviously, Melissa and I are geeking out on this, so we'll happily answer any questions. You can always reach out to us because we love talking about this and diving into it more. So, but I want to get into a movement exercise because I want to show how, even though it's just so subtle, what a shift can happen and what it can be like. And what I love about the practice is even if you don't feel anything, so even if you're like, I'm not energy sensitive, I don't feel anything, I can't meditate. When we set our intention to care for our energy and know the intention behind the exercise, it's already at work. Like, once again, the body is this incredible, intelligent thing. It's talking to you through emotions and thought patterns. And so when you finally take a step and say, okay, I've heard you, and now I'm going to give you something, and we call them prescription exercises for that reason. We have this intention of tuning in and correcting whatever that stagnated behavior is and really loving it. It's going to listen and it's going to be grateful. And so the way this all works is we're going to use breath and movement to guide energy and take care of a stagnation. The question is, what stagnation do we want to take care of today? Because we can obviously work on some spleen loving because it is spleen season. But I also wanted to ask out to the audience or even people at home, is there a specific emotion or mental thought process or any kind of stagnated energy source that you would like to work on today?
So I'm going to list them. So fear, anxiety, worry, anger, grief.
Grief. Heard that. Yeah.
I'm just going to put them in the chat.
Okay.
And the other ones that you want to put in there.
I think it was all 5, right?
Anger. Yeah.
Yeah. Right. So we have a grief for the room here, which I think is a great thing to work as it's coming. Yeah. Yeah. Grief over here. Do we have any other add-ons in?
Yep. I'm waiting for anyone to pop anything in the chat. Even if you want to send it to me privately, if you don't want to publicly display,
Correct.
You can send me a private message to me versus to everyone if you don't really want to share where your emotional space is. That's perfectly fine.
About the assessment.
That way I can give her.
Oh, yeah.
We have despair, so that would be also grief.
Yeah. Did they, there was that handout, did that?
Yeah.
Oh, that was there too. Okay. Yeah. You hold on to it, but the handouts that did go out with registration, those take what we just talked about in those 5 areas to a greater depth. So it lets you know the other areas or other symptoms that would show up from an emotional, physical, or a mental thought process.
Yes.
Spiritual, yes. So from that aspect. So when you look at those, if you look at like LV is liver, KD is kidney, LU is lung, HT is heart, and SP is spleen. And then there's their counterparts. So spleen is associated with the stomach, lungs are with large intestine, kidneys are with bladder, heart, small intestine, and liver and gallbladder. Right?
Yeah.
Really testing.
I know, she's testing. And I think the thing that you also said is if you're going through and you take that assessment and you have more than 3 in an area,
Thank you.
that if you're not in this room, we had some looks from the audience going,
Yeah.
oh,
That's normal. So that's normal too. And what I always try to say is, these are layer upon layer. So if you're looking at it, you're like, oh my gosh, like there's so much everywhere. I always say, where do you feel called? So if instantly to your mind, if you're like, it's grief, it's sadness, like that's what I'm feeling heavy on my heart every single day, then work the lung. And then after you work the lung and get a shift, see if those symptoms change. Because sometimes you see a trickle, because it's all about trying to find that root cause. They're all connected. So as Kara kind of made me go around in this beautiful kind of cycle, they all nourish and take care of each other. And sometimes they basically call a friend to say, they're not getting it, someone help me. Or it starts to create a deficiency in the next element or the next organ over in its cycle. So obviously, to Melissa's point, she kept saying it, but everything is obviously connected. And a lot of the work that we do is trying to undo and reverse the path to figure out where does the starting point lie, but also to give people peace while we're trying to find that starting point.
Can I ask one more question before
Yes.
you do the movement? So with acupuncture, they're using needles to move the chi flow and move the energy. For those people who've never seen a one-on-one Qigong session and they're going to see the movement, what would you say to someone that's watching an acupuncturist, watching you? Like, what does it look like visibly, and how is it different in the method and the application?
So the acupuncture was meant to be used to physically stimulate the meridians when your basically energy is settling more in a physical state. So it's like the most extreme kind of intervention, because you're putting a needle directly into a meridian. And then if they are trained in Qigong, usually they would activate it with energy as well. So it's just fully like activating those channels. We do we can do the same thing. We do something called Jing point therapy, where we actually can create energetic needles, and we would actually put them in the body just like you would see an acupuncturist do. And most people actually will say they think that we have needles inserted into their body, even though there's not. And even if their practitioner forgets to take them out, they'll be like, wait, before you close up, I think you still have a needle in, so we can pull them out. When we don't need to go that specific, we are working in the body. So we're trained to dip into the body and work the organs and the associated meridians. So what's different is some people will think it feels like somebody's playing in my liver. Yes, we're playing in your liver. Feels like you're in my lungs. It feels like we're actually scrubbing the lungs. One of the protocols that we use in techniques actually is like those micro bubbles from that bathroom foam cleaner that used to have that commercial, scrubby bubbles where they're like, yeah. We actually put them on the lungs, and it's like a scrubbing method that when we dip into and you will actually feel this sensation of a scrubbing happening on your lungs to break up that stagnated energy. And the other example that I always give, Melissa and I will always do this, but like, if you've not seen a session, you can face me, because I'm gonna show, because you can't feel this at home, but basically, if you just imagine like my hand's coming down to her shoulder and it's gonna stop, but then I energetically extend into the body, and then I can work into the body. And she's really feeling this. So but so we basically do that aspect. The other piece is your energy field is not just your body. You have a physical body, you have your mental, emotional, it comes out about here, and then we've got spiritual that's usually pretty underdeveloped for most people out here. So sometimes we are working in those fields as well. So those ones are when I'm always like, if you were to open your eyes and we're working on your emotional field, it would look like I'm clearing and doing things out, like swimming through the air. But that's theoretically what we're doing at that time frame.
Yeah.
Great question. Thank you, Karen.
Yeah. And I think we very rarely, there are some places that will touch on a body, just dependent upon the situation and what's needed. But it's more so we're hovering over the body to either put energy in, purge the energy. And again, it shouldn't hurt. But there are some things, depending upon if people have a lot of trauma, some people have to go back and feel that trauma again before they can let it move.
Yeah. Yeah.
And some people they don't have to feel it. Some people get up and they think it's a 90-minute massage, but they had a great massage. Then other people were like, okay.
Yeah. Sometimes it is work. It's, you're doing the work. Yeah. And the meridians, they're just like, it's your internal energetic pipes. So you think about if someone's cleaning your pipes. If you have a clog in one of the pipes, our goal is never to put energy in and blast through any kind of clog. But that is times when I think people will say that maybe it feels a little more aggressive. The idea is to gently kind of move those things along so that, once again, energy flows freely.
And I think the one for me that was the aha moment was when we talked about the kidneys being like your life source. So when you're always tired, you're run down. And I always used to have knee problems or ankle problems.
Kidney meridian.
I was like,
feet,
like it was just hurt. And once I started this, I don't have those.
Yeah.
They're not there because that was where I was holding it.
And even if you don't have back pain or, any kind of pain in the legs, if at night when you lay down in bed, you feel that relief in the lower back just from the day, that's the kidneys. Like I always say, think about them like, think of your kidneys as grapes at the beginning of the day. And then as you go through, they turn into these raisins. And then your sleep is basically, for most of us, what plumps them back up. Now, if you don't sleep, that's where this gets really nice and fun. So there's a lot of times where our prescription is not a movement. It's going to be, hey, you need to sleep.
Mhm.
All right. So we're going to do
Just one more
movements.
question on the
Yeah.
chat. How is this similar to Reiki?
So Reiki works obviously with energy sources, predominantly through the chakras. We have that knowledge layered over when we get to that deeper level, but we're more focused on the symptoms from an emotional, mental aspect and physical aspect before we even get to the spiritual. Like those layers have to be removed, and then we can do things like we have our own protocol where we call opening and closing, not opening, closing. We can actually clear the chakra gates, so we could actually open them up and then clear them out, like basically do the pipe cleaning on the chakra, which then is a beautiful complement when Reiki comes in and does them. So they're usually a really great complement with each other. Honestly, I think all energy like practitioners are just a great complement with each other because all of our gifts are just so different. And so it's really knowing how that blend can really create an ultimate kind of care team. So we're just a little more, our studies are more focused on looking at the body from probably a more medical perspective, which is why it's called medical Qigong.
Yeah.
So yeah. What I was going to say is, do you want to pull a chair and maybe you could do a seated version of the method so that if for some reason you are in a situation where you're not comfortable standing or it's too comfortable or too painful to stand, you could do it from a seated position. I know you'll get that nice fun one. So if you're seated, if you're going to do it seated, the main rule is feet flat on the ground. So you want to make sure that you're grounded in that fashion. And then if you want to and at home, if you want to stand and kind of find some space, basically the rule is that you should be able to put your arms out and swing them around and not whack anything. So you want to have that. You can stand, yes, if you want to do standing movement with us, or you can stay seated with like Melissa, and we'll do that accommodation there.
I am the modified version.
She is the modified version here.
So I think some things as we go through, the first thing we'll do is purge. And I think the biggest thing is not to throw it at people. Not, when you're purging your energy and the toxic energy, you do not want to throw it at people. You want to throw it to not just on the ground. You want to send it to the earth so that it's actually comes back and it is repurposed for someone else.
Yes. So no energy is bad energy. We're going to send it back into the earth. It's going to be recycled and it's going to be nourishing energy for a plant, an animal, and maybe even another human being. So we just want to make sure that the intention is powerful. So yes, don't toss it into your friends. Don't toss it into a plant or an animal at home
Or an ex or anything like that.
Don't do that. All right. So we're going to start with some purging. And the last rule with Qigong is there's no gain from any pain. So if anything ever hurts, stop doing the posture, stop doing the movement. If it's ever too much. So one of the things about Qigong is sometimes the moves will look simple, but they can be deceiving. If you're experiencing pain, stop. Like just stand in stillness and take a breath. All right. So let's get started. If you're standing, I'm going to be about shoulder width apart with my legs. My feet are going to be straight ahead in front of me. And then I'm going to relax my knees. So I have this nice little bend. And then I'm going to roll my hips under. So I'm going to tuck my hips under. And this is basically elongating the base of my spine. So I just want to have this nice rooted connection to the earth. And then we're just going to roll our shoulders back until you find this natural position. And then my arms are just kind of dangling here by the side. And if you're in the chair, you just stay comfortable, tall spine. And then let's just take a moment and not control our breath, but just notice the breath. with the mouth gently closed and just inhaling in and out through the nose. And as you inhale, imagine sending that breath into the belly and making sure that the belly is expanding on that inhale and then contracting on the exhale. Almost like this beach ball that's blowing up on the inhale and deflating on the exhale. So we're going to start with our perching exercise. This is an exercise by my teacher, Ted O'Brien in Gettysburg. It's called tossing out the sick chi. So obviously this is an opportunity that you can throw energy. So we want to make sure we send it into the earth. So I'm going to show you the first time. What this is going to look like is I'm going to come down to my feet. And if you're in the chair, you're going to reach as far over as you can. And if you can't get all the way there, you're going to just imagine that you can reach all the way down. And I'm going to have these energetic spirit fingers, these rakes, and I'm going to comb through my body. So I'm going to come down and I'm going to inhale up, combing through the body, collecting energy, and then I'm going to exhale out through the mouth and throw the energy into the earth like this. And it's a real throw, shaking, so that think about stuff actually being on your hands and you've got to release it into the earth. Okay, so let's try this together. Let's all dip down, inhale up, and release. Good. Let's try that again. Let's do two more. One. Good. We're going to move into the Taoist yin exercise for the lungs because we're thinking about grief. And I'm going to combine this with a healing sound because we're experiencing grief, which is the emotion. So we're going to move that energy out. But then I want to also bring beautiful energy in. So the way we're going to do this is when we inhale in, we're going to see a color. We're going to see a beautiful white light. And as I inhale, I'm going to imagine it's going to be filling my lungs. And then I'm going to exhale out on a shh sound. So like you're a librarian telling people to be quiet. So let's just take a moment. If you want to have your hands hovering over the lungs, let's just take a breath in, seeing that white light, sending it to the lungs. And when you're ready on that release, just do that gentle sound. Shh. Inhale white light. And exhale the sound. Shh. One more. Now we're going to add the movement in to bring the hands up in front of the chest. And I'm going to first push my hands out, flip them to the ceiling, and I'm going to imagine that I'm going to breathe in that energy. So my hand's going to fold in like this, breathing in white light to the lungs. They flip down to the earth, exhale out sound. Shh. Flip to the sky, inhale white light. Flip down, exhale sound. Shh. Inhale. Two more. Bring the hands down in front of your lower abdomen. So that sound actually rattles the exterior side of each lung, allowing that energy that's stagnated on the outside of our lungs to be released. So now we need to focus on the inside of the lungs. And so to just get started, we're just going to start by circling down the sternum just to physically kind of just check and break up some of this stagnation here. If you feel any tenderness coming down the chest bone, you can linger there. You don't have to do this really firm, just light touches, light circles, imagining that any energy that's there is breaking up.
And I think the other thing is when you're doing the healing sounds, sometimes you can let go of that sound and just keep going and going and going. Do it until you lose that you can't kind of make that sound anymore.
Thanks. Yeah, sometimes we call it energetic vomiting because it will feel like that. Much nicer though. You don't need a toilet. All right. So we're going to bring the hands back up in front of the lungs, and we're going to bring in that second sound, but we're just going to do some breath first to get familiar with the sound. So this sound is the S. So now we're not the librarian, we're the snake. So we're going to inhale, still white light. And exhale. S. Again. One more. Now let's put our hands in the position for the movement. We're going to do 5 rounds with this sound. So we'll push our hands out, flip it to the sky. Imagine that white light, breathing it in, flip them down, and then we'll do sound. That's one. Coming the hands to fall in front of the lower abdomen. So this area is known as the lower dantian. It's linked, even though our kidneys are a little higher, this is kind of the energetic home for them. This is where that energy or battery source is. And so we bring our hands down here, we just invite any excess energy to just kind of store for a later date. And we're going to move into our regulation practice, which we're going to do as a meditation. So just standing here, holding this posture. And I want you to imagine that you're standing or sitting in this golden river of energy. And it's coming up to your waist. And you can feel that thickness touching your legs and all around you from the waist down. Now imagine that you reach down into that river and you gather a ball. This beautiful golden energy. And you hold this precious ball and you lift it out of the river and you bring it up in front of your chest. Then imagine that ball gets bigger and it grows in front of you. Now see it start to shrink again and get smaller back to its original size. Now reach out and grab that ball and bring it into your chest. You feel that golden chi touching your heart. Push that ball away from the heart, back out. It's hovering there in front of the chest. And then push it back down to the river where it disperses. You're going to do that again. So I want you to imagine now you're picking up a new ball of golden energy. Bring it up in front of the chest. See it get bigger. See it get smaller. Pull it into your chest. Feel its warmth. Push it away and out, back to its original position. And then let it fall back down to the river and disperse. Let's gather one more energy ball. Pulling that ball of golden energy out of the river, seeing it hover in front of you. See it get bigger. See it get smaller. Pull it into the chest. Push it away. Let it fall and let it disperse and return to the river. Now let's take our hands and place one on top of the other over our lower abdomen, that lower dantian, inviting any energy that might still be swirling to come back to its home. Go ahead and let the body relax. So that was about 15 minutes. You can modify this in a bunch of different ways. Obviously, we did it seated. You could do it without movements and only doing the sound work, the breath work. You can do all of this mentally because you can guide energy internally with your mind. But following those 3 steps is kind of what makes this a prescription workout. Being able to purge, being able to tonify, and then being able to regulate. And with that, that was all that we had planned for you today. Melissa and I are going to hang out if people have any last minute questions. But thank you so much for joining us today. We're so grateful for all of you.
Thank you.
And everyone online, if you're watching the recording, make sure you check the handout is available below this recording, as well as information about how to contact Sam and Melissa. So follow them on Facebook, Instagram. We'll have all that information there for you. We encourage you because they're a wealth of information. And we appreciate you guys for being here.
Thank you for having us.
And any questions you have in the chat, comments, Pat Dumas is here and she said, that was so awesome. Thanks.
Thanks, Pat.
Yeah. Anyone want to share any experiences? I mean, you don't have to, but if anyone has anything, I had a lighter feeling after the 3rd ball.
Yeah.
And the ball kept getting lighter every time I pulled it out. It's nice.
Yeah. And that exercise actually has movements. And Melissa and I were like, I thought this would be really juicy just doing it in our minds. And it was. So just so many options with it.
We have thank yous coming from the chat. Thank yous. Thank you.
I felt it in my lungs. Like I could feel it. Like while we were sitting there doing the golden ball, I was like, oh. So
Yeah.
I feel
Oh,
like
yeah.
we could cry.
yeah.
That would be a normal response, working the lungs with the grief. So if your eyes water, that's normal. You can also, I will say, you can do healing sounds. Usually if you're actively experiencing grief or you're trying to move an emotion through, you can do it up to 30 minutes. And the trick is if you do experience a release, don't stop, keep doing the sounds until it passes. Some people will get emotion to the surface and stop, but when you do that, you're leaving a chaotic emotion there at the surface. So just write it. You don't have to do all of it. So if you're like, oh, I'm grieving a lost loved one and it's all coming to the surface, wait till it passes, and then you can pause, and then you can pick up your practice at another time. So just know that's why we call it energetic vomiting, because at some point it's just like the stuff just comes, and it doesn't mean you'll even know what it's tied to.
Yep.
And then the last thing I will say is if you were doing this movement and it's tender, so the lung meridian runs down the arms. So that's just kind of gently reminding you that, yes, you're on the right path. You should be working this because I'm the meridian that needs help right now. So once again, and there's a nice line between pain and discomfort. So if it's just uncomfortable, continue. But if it becomes painful, stop. And then you can always go mentally and do the intention and the exercise.
And I think the other thing we talked about is when you're doing the sounds, you might hear it blip, kind of like, or like, that's you release. That's a release that's going through when you can't kind of do that. You could also cough if you're doing the lung too.
Correct.
I've seen that.
Magically have breath that comes from nowhere. Like you're like, I didn't take that deep of a breath, and now I feel like I'm exhaling for 5 minutes. Yeah. That's normal. That's good. That means you're on the right path. That's why we call it energetic vomiting, because all of a sudden you're like, and then you're like, but it's a good thing.
I like to tell people when they're driving, it's a great time to like breathe in the color and maybe do a sound as you're driving.
Eyes open.
With eyes open, do not meditate, please. And if you start to cry, pull over. But just kind of, it's a way like you can look and you can see the clouds that are white, and then that's your reminder to kind of breathe in that white light and then let things go. So thank you guys again.
Yeah.
Thanks guys again for joining us, everyone. Have a wonderful weekend, everybody.
What were you doing the first time?
What, I was dancing?